Hi, welcome to my channel, True Crime with Gael. Thanks so much for stopping by. If you do enjoy this video, please like, comment, or subscribe. Alright, let's begin. Laurent F. Dresden, Germany has a population of approximately 1.34 million and is the capital city of the German state of Saxony. It's also the second most populous city after Leipzig. Dresden has experienced dramatic changes since the reunification of Germany in the early 90s. The city still bears many wounds from the bombing raids of 1945, but it has undergone significant reconstruction in recent decades. Since German reunification in 1990, Dresden has become a cultural, educational, and political center of Germany. The economy of Dresden is one of the most dynamic in Germany and ranks first in Saxony. It's dominated by high-tech branches and is often called Silicon Saxony. According to the Hamburg Institute of International Economics and Berenberg Bank in 2019, Dresden had the 7th best prospects for the future of all cities in Germany. It has an incredible potential for growth. Dresden has evolved into a very modern city, which is why people were that much more shocked to learn of the barbaric, regressive actions of Laurent F. in May of 2019. Laurent F. was a 55-year-old man who was born in France but lived in Dresden, Germany since 1992. His identity is protected because of local privacy laws where he lives in Dresden. Laurent was a professional builder and a violent man whose previous convictions included rape, arson, and most recently, drug smuggling, when he was caught trying to take a kilogram of crystal meth across the border from Poland into Germany in December of 2018. 2 years earlier, Laurent's building firm had experienced serious financial difficulties, and his wife Marietta, a 27-year-old Senegalese woman, moved out of the family home, which bruised his self-esteem. Consequently, he blamed his ex-wife for his troubles and wanted revenge. Laurent was a miserable man who wanted miserable company. His method of achieving this was through destroying the lives of many people with a hideous plan he set into motion in 2019. On May 9, 2019, he was looking after his children, Maya, who was 2, and Leo, who was 5. He took their pictures, Leo sitting on his bike, and Maya licking an ice cream cone. Laurent then called his ex-wife and asked her to come to his house to bring rabbit toys that he claimed Maya had left at her house. After convincing Marietta to come to his place, he took the children home and strangled them until they were unconscious. He then forced fast-acting insulation foam down their throats to seal their small airways and ensure that no one would be able to revive them. The police later found the can of construction foam on the kitchen table, along with a pair of suede work gloves. After the brutal murder, Laurent tucked the kids' bodies into bed to make it seem as if they were sleeping. He then waited for Marietta to arrive. When the children's mother came several hours later, he refused to let her see them, saying they were in bed. An argument ensued, leading Laurent to hit her over the back of the head with a heavy object. However, Marietta survived the attack because she was wearing a thick wig and managed to crawl to the front door. Laurent then began strangling her until the fight was interrupted by a witness. A surveillance camera on the street shows Laurent F. strangling his wife in the front of the house. The sequence is over 30 seconds long. Marietta later reported that she almost passed out. Neighbors rushed to help. They initially thought the children were asleep and tried to awaken them, but they quickly realized that they weren't breathing. When they tried to resuscitate them, they were dismayed to discover that their mouths were filled with construction foam. When Marietta was examined, following Laurent's brutal attack, she showed a massive amount of swelling on her face, especially her chin and forehead. The doctor said that this was probably caused by multiple punches. The lower lip even had to be sewn. At first, there was even a suspicion that the jaw might have been broken too. A coroner later ruled that the children died from a combination of massive and lasting compression in the neck and respiratory tract blockage. Building foam was found in Maya's stomach, which proves that she was alive because there must have been a swallowing reflex. In Leo, building foam was found in the esophagus, throat, and nasal cavities. Another medical professional stated that both children had full face bleeding. This is a sure sign that they were choked persistently and massively. During the trial, Laurent was examined by psychologists and was found to be an aggressive narcissist who showed a lack of empathy. However, experts ruled that he was psychologically capable enough to face sentencing. Laurent F. was ultimately sentenced to life imprisonment for murdering his 2 children and the attempted murder of Marietta. He will have to serve at least 20 years in prison before he is released. Sitaram. Berbice is a region along the Berbice River in Guyana, which was colonized by the Dutch between 1627 and 1815. Afterwards, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland took over colonizing the country. It was merged with Esquibo and Demerara to form the colony of British Guyana in 1831. In 1966, British Guyana gained independence from the UK and became Guyana. Today, the main occupation in East Bank Berbice is to be a farmer. The area has a vibe of living in the country, and a large portion of Berbice borders the Berbice River, which makes fishing a common activity among its residents. Berbicians were in complete shock when they witnessed a woman and her daughter getting gruesomely attacked one morning. Neighbors gathered around the home to give support in any way they could, even taking part in chasing the culprit before he disappeared into the cane fields. They were even more surprised because they knew the quiet man that they were pursuing, the coward and bastard husband and father of the victims. 41-year-old Sitaram, whose nickname was Rado, had been previously employed at a cement factory on the east bank of Berbice as a security guard. After the factory closed down, he started working at a sawmill, again as a security guard. But when he'd gotten sick of it, he quit that job. Tensions were high because he had been unemployed for several years and refused to work, since his family was being supported by loved ones that lived overseas. Rado's wife, 38-year-old Bindumati Sitaram, also known as Kamik, often complained about this to her father and the rest of her family. The family saw Rado as a burden on Bindumati and their children. The couple often had to borrow money from family members to make ends meet. Their 21-year-old daughter, Surujai Khan, had recently gotten married in April 2017, and her husband, Ryan Khan, was still overseas. Surujai was expecting to migrate and join her husband really soon. Until then, Ryan would send money to the family too. Tensions grew to a tumultuous level a few weeks before the incident. When interviewed, the couple's 11-year-old son told authorities that his father had accused his mother of having an extramarital affair, and they had a misunderstanding over it. On June 6, 2018, emotions were high and erupted into a fever pitch. Just after 9 a.m., Rado began a 30-minute rampage that would decimate the Sitaram family. Rado's 11-year-old son, Aaron, was watching television while his sister was asleep in a chair in an upstairs bedroom, and his mother laid in the hammock underneath the house as she had finished her domestic chores. Aaron told investigators that he heard his mother telling his father to move from next to her. The two children rushed downstairs where they saw their father armed with a hammer with a wooden handle and a knife. Both children witnessed their father beating their mother's head with the hammer as she laid there, trapped in the hammock. Rado then attempted to attack his son, who escaped and managed to run half a mile to his grandmother Amawati Bahari's home to tell her what had occurred. The grandmother and her grandson left immediately to reach the crime scene. In a fit of rage, Rado then turned to his daughter and hit her multiple times on her head with the hammer as well. He then returned to his wife to slit her throat and went back to bashing his daughter with the hammer. One neighbor ran towards the woman's screams, and he told them to get away from him. Rado justified what he was doing by telling the neighbor that they had disrespected him. After the 30-minute attack, Rado finally had exhausted all the rage from his body. He fled the scene as some neighbors chased him, and others alerted the authorities as they went to the injured woman to see if they could help. By the time Aaron and his grandmother Bahari had arrived at the scene, Rado was long gone, and all they could do was tend to the women who were left behind. Bindumati died at the scene, while their 21-year-old daughter, Surujai, succumbed to her fatal injuries while receiving treatment at the New Amsterdam Public Hospital. In the aftermath of the attack, about 1 hour later, a construction worker noticed a man wearing a brightly colored red shirt hanging under an abandoned house. According to the police, Rado was found about 400 to 500 meters southeast of the scene, with a canvas rope tied around his neck. A knife with a wooden handle was seen on the beam from which he was hanging, and they noticed it was covered in what appeared to be blood. The hammer which was used in the attack was found on a table at the Sitaram's residence. The couple had been together for over 22 years. As with most situations like this, no one had suspected that Rado could perpetrate such violence against another person, let alone members of his own family. The community was shocked and rocked to its core. They seemed like every other family on the block. the funeral service was conducted according to Hindu rites, held only a short distance from where the brutal scene occurred. Several of Rado's close family members were at the funeral service for the two women. Surujai's husband, Ryan Khan, returned to Guyana to attend her funeral. Hundreds of others turned up to bid farewell to the two women. Many of them were inconsolable after viewing the graphic conditions of their bodies. The last remaining member of the Sitaram family, Aaron, is now 15 years old and is currently in the care of relatives. Filicide is the deliberate act of a parent killing their own child. Men, as opposed to women, who kill their children, are more likely to kill older children, be unemployed, be facing separation from their spouse, and are more likely to abuse alcohol or drugs. Among 16 to 18-year-old victims, fathers committed 80% of the homicides. The method of killing is related to the age of the victim. The most common methods of infanticide are battering, smothering, strangling, and drowning. Homicide of infants and young children is typically committed with personal weapons such as hands or feet, and rarely involve firearms, knives, and other dangerous weapons. Conversely, older children are killed with knives, firearms, and other lethal weapons. Fathers tend to use more violent methods such as striking, squeezing, or stabbing, whereas mothers more often drown, suffocate, or gas their victims. Dr. Philip Resnick published research on filicide in 1969 and stated that there were 5 main motives for filicide, including altruistic filicides, which are committed out of love rather than anger or hate. There are 2 subgroups to this method. The first is filicide associated with suicide, in which parents make a decision to take their own life first. Mothers may then feel that they cannot abandon their children and leave them motherless in what they perceive as a cruel world. They sometimes see their children as an extension of themselves and may believe that their children suffer the same misery as they do. About a third of mothers who kill their children take their own lives. Fathers are almost twice as likely to complete suicide after filicide. This difference may not be because mothers attempt suicide less often, but because men are much more likely to complete their suicide due to using more lethal methods. Men are also much more likely to commit familicide, that is, taking their wives as well as their children into death with them. The second subgroup is filicide to relieve or prevent suffering. These parents kill to relieve the child's suffering, which may be real or imagined. If the suffering is real, the killing could be characterized as euthanasia. Much more often, however, the filicide is based on a delusional perception that a child is suffering or at risk of going to hell. The second motive for filicide is acutely psychotic filicide. This applies to psychotic parents who kill with no comprehensible motive. It includes patients who kill under the influence of command hallucinations, epilepsy, or delirium. The third motive is unwanted child filicide. These murders are committed because the child is no longer wanted and is the most common motive for killing newborns. The fourth motive is child maltreatment filicide. These homicides usually result from a fatal battered child syndrome. The violent outbursts often occur in the overzealous application of discipline. Persistent crying is a common precipitant. This is the only one of the 5 filicide categories in which the death is not intended by the parent. The final motive is spousal revenge filicide. This category consists of parents who kill their offspring in a deliberate attempt to make their spouses suffer. The most common precipitants for spousal revenge filicide are spousal infidelity and child custody disputes. Glenn Carruthers, who authored the paper Making Sense of Spousal Revenge Filicide, argued that those who engage in spousal revenge killings only see their children as objects. Mario Bresi. Valsassina is a lush valley in the province of Lecco. It's situated among the mountain range of Grigne to its west, the Bergamasche Alps and Prealps to the east, and the valley of Val d'Inese to its north. Valsassina is a fertile sanctuary and is an incredible destination for tourists to travel to for vacation. It's full of flower meadows, cliffs, waterfalls, and hiking trails that lead to stunning views of Lake Como and the surrounding areas. In June of 2020, a father and his 12-year-old twins, Elena and Diego, visited their vacation home in Valsassina to seemingly escape the monotonies of quarantine. Little did the village know, one of the most horrific events to occur in their beautiful valley was about to take place. 45-year-old Mario Bresi had an idyllic life on the surface. He had married his wife Daniela in 2003, and they were surprised with twins only a few years later, a boy named Diego and a girl named Elena. The Bresi family were known and loved by everyone in their community. They lived in a beautiful home with a garden, and Mario was employed as a biomedical engineer. In interviews, all of his neighbors spoke of him as a quiet, regular, very kind person and an affectionate father. He was also an Avis donor and an amateur parish historian, which means that he loved to learn the histories of various churches. Avis, or the Associazione Volontari Italiani del Sangue, which translates to Association of Voluntary Italian Blood Donors, is one of the largest Italian non-profits and charitable organizations for blood donation. Daniela and Mario had known each other for a long time. They had been together since childhood, but at some point, things took a turn for the worse. Daniela had asked for a separation in 2018 for unknown reasons. By all accounts, it had been a peaceful divorce process, and Daniela had no intention of not allowing Mario to see the children. It's unclear as to exactly when this divorce had triggered Mario into a 2-year spiral that cracked and shattered with his depraved actions. In June of 2020, Mario Bresi had brought Elena and Diego to their holiday home in Valsassina under the guise of them enjoying a short vacation together. The neighbors said that the last time they saw them, they were happily playing in the garden. On the evening of Friday the 26th, Mario posted 2 pictures of him and the twins together. Both had the phrase "con I miei" ragazzi sempre insieme written on them, which translates to, with my children, always together. Mario then fed Elena and Diego dinner, and in the wee hours of the morning, he strangled the twins as they slept. Afterwards, between 1:30 and 3 in the morning, he began to send Daniela 3 WhatsApp messages that were accusatory and mocking in nature. He texted his ex-wife about the summer camp their children were supposed to attend. As Daniela slept, he accused her of having ruined the family and said, quote, "I'll take flight. Tomorrow you will have much bigger problems than the children's canteen." Mario also mocked her with photographs of the places he said he wanted to take the twins on vacation, dangling a future before her that he knew already no longer existed. Then, at around 3 in the morning, he informed Daniela that, quote, "You will be alone. It is only your fault because they have already taken off." The next morning, after seeing his deranged messages, Daniela rushed to their vacation home, hoping she wasn't too late, and half knowing she already was. She shook the twins' lifeless bodies frantically when she found them in their beds. In an act of futility, she shrieked into a void, commanding them to wake up, wake up. A month after the murders, the Laco prosecutor's office confirmed that the toxicological examination on the bodies of Diego and Elena were negative for sedatives. Mario Bresi had not sedated his 2 children before strangling them in their holiday home. It is still unclear to this day, however, as to whether or not the murders were premeditated or a crime of passion. The Ponte della Vittoria is a bridge that is 122.4 meters long, with a maximum height of 12.25 meters, and has 3 arches with a maximum span of 49 meters. It is made of reinforced concrete and has experienced 2 major collapses in its lifespan, and has bore witness to many more, one of which occurred on June 27, 2020, when Mario Bresi tore many lives to shreds before finding solace in leaping off her steady shoulders. Before jumping off the bridge, Mario got rid of the twins' cell phones and also his own. It is suspected that it was his last slap to the face, and that Mario did not want to leave any physical memories for Daniela. When interviewed, Daniela said, quote, "Hate? I don't know what this word means. How can you hate a human being? I have so much anger inside, so much sadness, so much regret. And then on who could I pour this hate? On someone who is gone? Who had a deviant personality? Who hated me deeply? Would it be right to pay him back in the same way? I miss them very much. Everything speaks to me about them. This is their house. This is their room. We played here, studied, chased each other, and threw pillows. I am told that they are with me spiritually, but that's not enough for me. I miss their hugs, their voices, their questions. That Wednesday before they left, the 3 of us were hugging on Elena's bed. I haven't seen them alive since. I will never see them again." Andrew Barry. I moved around a few times as a kid, but I spent most of my life in New York, Long Island to be exact. I remember the joy that rose up in my heart when I would wake up and realize I had no school, because everything would be covered in a twinkling layer of snow. To this day, watching snowflakes fall from the sky feels almost magical to me. However, there came a time where every year it would snow less and less. So when the random years came, where our town would be swallowed up into a thick blanket of wonder, we appreciated it so much more. That's why the beginning of 6-year-old Chloe and 4-year-old Aubry Berry's tragic final story was so relatable and almost benign to me when I started to research it. Andrew Berry and Sarah Cotton had met while working together for a local ferry company in 2009. They soon started living together, but after having their daughters, their relationship fell apart. In 2013, the couple split. Andrew got an apartment and started co-parenting with Sarah. By the time 2017 had rolled around, Chloe and Aubry were the best thing to come out of their precarious relationship. The girls were both smart, popular, confident, and deeply loved. Aubry had played Angel Gabriel in the school nativity that year for Christmas, and Chloe had just gotten into horse riding and was in the last year of preschool. Andrew and Sarah had very different parenting styles. Sarah was a very financially stable and responsible mother who always prioritized her daughters. She also always communicated with Andrew about the girls and their lives, even when things were strained. Meanwhile, Andrew's focus was in prioritizing his all-consuming addiction to gambling. Andrew's gambling habit escalated to the point that he lost all self-restraint and soon became buried in debt. In May 2017, a judge had allowed Andrew parental visits and shared custody, and put Sarah under an incredible amount of mental stress. Andrew had quit his job at BC Ferries and had such big debts that the utilities had been cut off to his apartment. Chloe and Aubry said it was like camping when they stayed with their dad, because they had to use flashlights and there was no running water. Andrew destroyed himself financially. His bank accounts were overdrawn. He had no income, nor was he looking for a job, and he lied and told his sister that he was working. He gambled his pension away. His rent was way overdue. He had burned bridges with his parents and couldn't go to them for help. He had maxed out all his credit and overdrafted all of his accounts. In December 2017, 43-year-old Andrew told Sarah that he had it all under control. And since it was Christmas, she agreed to let him spend part of the holidays with their daughters. Andrew hadn't told Sarah about his deepening resentment towards her. He also left out the fact that he was in such debt he was facing eviction and was barely able to feed himself, let alone the girls. On December 21st, Sarah dropped her daughters off with Andrew, and it was agreed they would be returned to her at noon on Christmas Day. The following day, Sarah returned because Chloe had forgotten her favorite stuffed toy, Lammy. The girls came to meet her in the lobby of Andrew's building. Chloe was dressed in a dragon costume that made her mother smile. The girls asked how many nights it would be until they saw their mom again, and Sarah told them it would be just a few more. Then she hugged them and told them she loved them not knowing that this would be the last time. As Christmas Eve steadily approached, the girls woke one morning to an incredible sight they rarely got to experience. Everything was covered in snow. They were filled with delight when they realized they would have a white Christmas after all. So they squeezed into their winter gear as soon as they could, grabbed their sleds, and were ready to play and make the most of this winter wonderland. But no amount of snow could lay a carpet thick enough to hide the unspeakable plan Andrew had already got underway. On Christmas Eve, Andrew took Chloe and Aubry to the local recreational center and market. Security footage caught them as they shopped for snacks and were the last known images of the girls alive. As they played in the snow, Sarah was back at her home, wrapping gifts and getting everything ready for their Christmas celebration. Andrew's parents, Brenda and Malcolm, were coming to Sarah's home at 2 p.m. on Christmas Day. They'd remained close since the separation and were looking forward to seeing their grandchildren. Chloe and Aubry were last seen playing in the snow on December 24th at around 11 p.m. No one in the apartment building saw them on Christmas Day. When Christmas Day came, Sarah was anxious to see the girls. However, when noon came and went, Chloe and Aubry were nowhere to be seen, and Andrew wasn't answering countless messages. Andrew's mom, Brenda, went to his apartment to check on them, but there was no reply. A neighbor said they thought they had heard the children waking up that morning. They frantically searched local parks, but when they found no signs of them, a distraught Sarah went to the Oak Bay police station. Officers went back to Andrew's home and entered a stomach-churning scene. Andrew was naked in the bathtub, close to death. He'd suffered stab wounds to the chest, neck, and throat. In his severely weakened state, he whispered, "Leave me. Kill me." His daughters were in their beds. Both were dead. A pink wooden baseball bat with the name Chloe written on it was found tangled in Chloe's hair, while a kitchen knife was found on the floor near the bed where Aubry was found. A sheath for the same knife was found on the kitchen floor. After a forensic investigation, it was revealed that neither girl had defensive wounds, and that the two young girls were murdered early on the morning of December 25th. Chloe had multiple skull fractures after being hit on the head with her own pink baseball bat. She had also been stabbed 26 times. Aubry had been stabbed 32 times. Both girls had stab wounds to the front and backs of their bodies. This showed that Andrew would have had to turn each of them over at least twice. It is unclear which girl was killed first. Investigators did not know whether all the wounds were inflicted to each child one at a time, or whether Andrew went back and forth between the two. Nonetheless, Andrew would have seen the effects of his stabbings, and then moved on to the other bedroom and done the same thing to his second daughter. He had time to think of what he was doing and chose not to stop himself. Andrew was rushed to a hospital, and officers told Sarah both her little girls were dead. She was too far gone to even feel how her world fell out from under her as she was held tightly and screamed hysterically at the police station. When Andrew had recovered from his injuries, he had a tall tale to tell. He said that the girls had been killed by a dark-haired, dark-skinned man who had attacked him and stabbed him in the throat because of his involvement with a Chinese loan shark called Paul. Andrew claimed that he had borrowed thousands of dollars to try to pay off his debts, but had gambled it all away. When he couldn't pay, he'd agreed that Paul could store packages in his apartment in return for an extension on payments. He assumed it was drugs. Andrew said that he had even given Paul a spare set of keys so they could come and go. Andrew also insisted that one of Paul's associates had used that very same key to come in and attack him. What Andrew couldn't explain was why they had killed 2 innocent children in his stead. However, Andrew's actions before and after the murders betrayed his shitty lies time and time again. A simple search of his apartment uncovered evidence that showed that at some point before the killings, he had decided to commit suicide. His suicide note refers to the girls carrying on without him. Andrew knew he was close to losing access to his children, and this prompted him to write a suicide note to his sister, blaming Sarah and his parents for his death. Apparently, he'd changed his mind and decided to kill his daughters instead, and then stabbed his neck and chest in a failed suicide attempt. Everyone struggled to believe Andrew's version of events. It seemed clear that Andrew had killed his daughters and then tried to take his own life to cover up what he'd done. Neighbors had heard thuds coming from his apartment early on Christmas morning, but no one came in or out. In addition to this, Andrew told on himself while he was in the hospital. He hadn't been able to speak, but wrote notes to his sister saying, quote, "I love you. I'm sorry. I have no idea what to say. I don't remember what I did, but I tried suicide." Needless to say, within days, Andrew was charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder. The trial lasted 5 long months. Andrew alone was on the stand for 5 days. Andrew was found guilty of 2 counts of second-degree murder. There was an audible gasp of relief in the court. Andrew hung his head. Sarah cried and hugged her loved ones. "It's been such a long journey. It's just such a relief," she said. Andrew was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 22 years. I was confused to discover that, for some reason, the prosecution agreed that the 2 22-year sentences should run concurrently instead of being back-to-back, which would have given him a minimum of 44 years, 22 for 6-year-old Chloe and 22 for 4-year-old Aubry. Sarah respected the judge's decision, but she also believed that he didn't get enough time. Ultimately, however, she was glad that the traumatizing experience of the trial was finally over. The murders brought members of the girls' community to their knees. Mourners and strangers attended vigils to support Sarah Thousands gathered where Chloe and Aubry loved to play, and their short lives were remembered. After they were cremated, Chloe and Aubry's ashes were placed in the same urn, covered in images of butterflies as a symbol of resurrection. Thanks so much for visiting my channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more content. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. I'll be posting mostly true crime, but also other mysteries and conspiracy theories. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you soon. I hope you all have peaceful and fulfilling weeks. Bye.